My mother did nothing for me. That was the sentence my daughter chose to describe her entire childhood. Not whispered, not said in anger behind closed doors. She posted it online, bold and public, like a headline she wanted the world to believe. I didn't see it right away. I found out because my phone wouldn't stop buzzing while I was standing in the checkout line at Target. At first, I thought it was a scam alert or some group text gone wild. Then I opened one message. "Are you okay? I just saw what your daughter wrote." My stomach dropped. I opened social media, and there it was, shared, liked, reposted, paragraphs about independence, about struggle, about how she raised herself and became strong despite me. She never used my name. She didn't have to. Everyone knew. I stood there holding my phone while the cashier asked if I needed a receipt. I don't remember answering. I remember driving home in silence, pulling into my driveway, and just sitting there with the engine off, rereading that sentence like it might change. My mother did nothing for me. I didn't cry. That part shocked me. What I felt was worse. It was like my entire life had been edited out with one careless swipe. I raised her alone. Her father walked out when she was barely old enough to remember his face. From then on, it was just me. 2 jobs, double shifts, cheap coffee, and no sleep. I learned how to stretch $1 until it screamed. I showed up to parent-teacher meetings straight from work, still in my uniform. I sat in folding chairs at school plays and clapped louder than anyone else. I wasn't perfect, but I was there, always. Reading that post made it feel like none of it counted. People flooded the comments, praising her strength, calling her brave, saying she didn't owe anyone anything. Every like felt like a quiet agreement that I had failed. I wanted to reply. I wanted to defend myself. I wanted to tell the truth. I didn't type a single word. That night, I sat alone at my kitchen table with the lights off, replaying memories like evidence in a trial no one asked me to attend. I searched for the moment I disappeared from her life. I couldn't find it. So the next morning, I did something I'd never done before. I stopped reaching. No calls, no texts, no comments, no explanations. When people asked about her, I said she was busy. When family hinted, I smiled and changed the subject. I stepped out of her life quietly, the way people do when they realize they've already been written out. Months passed. The internet moved on. She kept posting like everything was perfect. And I stayed silent. Until the envelope arrived. A legal notice. And when I saw my name listed as the only witness, I finally understood why she needed the world to believe I did nothing. Because now, she needed something from me. The envelope didn't look dramatic. No red stamps, no bold warnings, just my name typed neatly on the front, like it belonged there. I opened it at my kitchen counter, standing up, still in my slippers. I expected junk mail, maybe a mistake. What I didn't expect was legal language, case numbers, dates. And then the line that made my knees feel weak. Witness, my full name. I sat down slowly, like my body already knew something my mind was still catching up to. My daughter was being sued. Civil court. Serious enough that lawyers were involved. Serious enough that my testimony mattered. I read the pages twice. Then a third time. She hadn't called me, hadn't texted, hadn't even warned me. After months of silence, after telling the world I did nothing for her, she'd listed me as her only witness. That's when it clicked. She didn't erase me because I was irrelevant. She erased me because I was inconvenient. The papers said the case revolved around a business dispute, contracts, verbal agreements, a timeline that only someone close to her could confirm, someone who knew where she lived, what she did, when certain decisions were made. Someone like me. That night, my phone rang for the first time in months. Her name lit up the screen like it had every right to be there. I let it ring, not to be cruel, not to make a point. I just wasn't ready to hear her voice pretending nothing had happened. She left a voicemail. "Mom, it's important. Please call me." Important. Funny how that word shows up only when silence becomes inconvenient. The next day, her lawyer called. Very polite, very professional. He explained how critical my testimony would be, how my perspective could help clarify things. He never mentioned her post, never acknowledged the damage. I told him I'd think about it. When I hung up, I walked through my house slowly. This place held decades of proof. School photos, report cards, old birthday cards she'd written in crooked handwriting. Evidence of a life she'd told the internet never happened. I wondered if she remembered any of it. That evening, I finally called her back. She answered immediately. "Mom," she said, like the words still belonged to her. We didn't waste time on small talk. She jumped straight into the case. The stress, the unfairness, how she'd been misunderstood, how much she needed me. Not once did she mention the post. Not once did she apologize. At some point, she said, "You know, I wouldn't ask if I had another option." I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I asked one question. "Do you still believe I did nothing for you?" The line went quiet. She didn't answer right away, and that silence told me everything I needed to know. I told her I'd let her know my decision soon. Then I hung up before she could fill the space with excuses. That night, I slept better than I had in months, because, for the first time, the choice wasn't hers. And when I imagined the courtroom, the judge, the lawyers, her waiting for me to speak, I realized something that made my chest tighten. What I said there would change her life. And I hadn't decided yet whether I was going to save her or finally tell the truth. I didn't decide right away. Anyone who tells you decisions like that come fast has never had their heart pulled in two directions by the same person. For days, I lived with that court date hanging over me like a storm cloud. I went about my routine, made coffee, folded laundry, watered the plants, but everything felt heavier. Every object in my house felt like a witness, too. Proof of a life I'd lived for someone who told the world I didn't matter. I pulled out old photo albums. Not because I needed reminders, but because I needed grounding. There she was at 6 years old, missing her 2 front teeth, holding a spelling bee ribbon. There she was at 16, pretending she didn't want me taking pictures before prom. There I was in every frame, standing just off to the side, smiling like I always did. I wondered which version of me she believed now. The woman in those photos, or the one she described online. The night before the hearing, she called again. This time, her voice wasn't confident. It cracked in places she tried to hide. "They're saying if you don't show up, it could go really bad for me," she said. I asked her, "Do you want me there because I'm your mother, or because I'm useful?" She didn't answer. Not right away. "Finally," she said, "I just need you." That sentence used to be enough. For years, it was everything. But now it landed differently. It felt incomplete, like a door left half closed on purpose. The morning of the hearing, I got dressed slowly. Neutral colors. Nothing loud, nothing emotional. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the calm woman staring back. She looked steadier than I felt. Older. Stronger. The courthouse was cold in that way. Government buildings always are. Clean, quiet, unforgiving. I saw my daughter sitting with her lawyer, tapping her foot, eyes scanning the room. When she saw me, her face changed. Relief first, then something else. Fear. We didn't hug. We didn't even speak. A clerk called my name, and suddenly I was standing, walking forward, sworn in like my truth was something that could be measured in minutes. The judge asked me to state my relationship to the defendant. "I'm her mother," I said. The room felt smaller after that. Then came the question that mattered, the one everyone had been waiting for, the one my daughter had built her entire case around. "Can you confirm the timeline she's described?" I looked at her, really looked, not as a child, not as someone I needed to protect, but as an adult who had made a choice to erase me when it was convenient and claim me when it wasn't. My mouth opened. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. I could say one sentence and save her. Or I could say another, and finally, stop saving everyone but myself. The courtroom was silent enough that I could hear my own breathing. Every eye was on me. The judge, the lawyers, my daughter, waiting. I didn't rush. For most of my life, I'd answered quickly, fixed things fast, stepped in before anyone else had to feel uncomfortable. This time, I let the pause sit, not out of spite, out of honesty. I can only speak to what I personally witnessed, I said. My daughter's shoulders relaxed, just a little. She thought I was about to protect her. Old habits die hard. I continued. There were periods during that time when my daughter was not living with me. I was not involved in those decisions, and I can't confirm the timeline she's described. The relief drained from her face. I didn't look at her after that. I kept my eyes forward, calm, steady. I wasn't lying. I wasn't exaggerating. I was telling the truth without bending it to save anyone. Her attorney tried to recover, asked follow-up questions, tried to guide me back to something more helpful. I answered carefully, precisely, no emotion, no embellishment. When I was dismissed, I stepped down and sat back in the wooden bench. My hands were steady. That surprised me. The ruling came later that day. She lost. Not catastrophically. Not dramatically. But enough to hurt. Enough to change things. Enough that she could no longer pretend everything had worked out on its own. She didn't speak to me after. Not that day. Not that week. I went home to my quiet house, made dinner, washed the dishes, and sat at the same kitchen table where I'd once stared at her words online. This time, the silence felt different. It wasn't empty. It was earned. Weeks passed. Then, one afternoon, a letter arrived. Not from a lawyer. Not from the court. From her. Inside, there were no excuses. No justifications. No blame. Just an apology. Simple. Uneven. Real. She wrote that she'd been angry. That she'd needed validation. That she'd said things she couldn't take back. She wrote that losing the case hurt, but losing my trust hurt more. She didn't ask for money. She didn't ask for help. She asked if we could talk. We met somewhere neutral. A small cafe. No history in the walls. She looked older, quieter, less certain of herself. We talked slowly. About respect. About boundaries. About how love doesn't mean erasing the person who gave it. Our relationship didn't snap back into place. Some things never do. But it became honest. And I learned something I wish I'd understood sooner. Silence isn't weakness. Truth isn't cruelty. And sometimes the most loving thing a mother can do is stop rewriting herself to fit someone else's story. If this story resonated with you, subscribe to the channel. These stories are shared for anyone who's learning that respect still matters even inside family.